Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Snoo, and this is a video about a little well-known spell called Toxic Rain and its cousin, Caustic Arrow. A couple of spells you might have heard about if you've played this game more than a few seconds. When I did a lot of research on good league starters, this spell just came up every single time. It must be, honestly, one of the most popular league starters in the entire game, if not the most popular. And every time I hear content creators talk about this skill, they always have to include, well, what about, the progression through using the skill as you gear up and continue gearing up, continue gearing up. Nobody ever really goes into detail. It's always the same old broken record message about, well, the skill's viable at the end game, but why would you even run that? Because, there's probably bigger and better things to do, right? So they just say, of course it's viable, but not very good. Basically, the TLDR on that. And I wanted to make a video to kind of dispel some of the myths that some people may have or misconceptions about it. Perhaps the degree by which the spell is viable or isn't viable. Well, TLDR on that, I do think it is viable in the end game. Now, I do want to come out with a quick disclaimer and admit that I've not been playing the game for years and years and years. I don't have an enormous wealth of knowledge of various different types of builds and, bossing versus mapping. In fact, I've never even made a bosser. And yet, this video is featuring a boss right on the front end. Cirrus, Awakener 8. Nothing special about it. Just getting to see a little bit about at least as far as the damage is concerned. I have broken this video into 5 different showcasing highlights, if you will. And each one focuses or hones in on a different aspect of what this particular build is capable of doing. And by the way, there's nothing insane or crazy about the build I'm doing. It's pretty much what you might expect. New masteries did come out, so there are a few little quirks and things that you may not be familiar with if you haven't taken a look at this build in a few patches. But it's pretty much all what you might expect. It's more just going to be, what kind of damage can you push with this kind of build is probably the biggest question. What kind of defenses can you get as well? How well-rounded can you make a character? Because I am not an all-in kind of player. When I play, I like to build a very well-rounded character. And while this first initial highlight is just basically just going to showcase the damage, some of the other highlights are going to explore more of the well-rounded aspects of the build. So, as you can see, I just died on purpose in this serious encounter so that I can go back in and do the final phase with basically all of the potential buffs that I have at my disposal. Flasks, primarily. And I'm looking around for Cirrus right here, and he's going to enter the phase in a second. And I was talking about bossing. Now, I do not consider this a bossing build. In fact, my POB is not really hardly oriented toward bossing at all. Just look at my recovery. It's really quite pitiful. But I don't have to worry about that too much, at least for this video. As you can see, I practically down him before he even teleports first time. You have about 3 seconds of free teleport. I do have Culling Strike on my glove, so he's essentially dead right here. And there you go. That's the kind of damage I'm pushing. If you check the POB, you're going to see that my Toxic Rain self-cast, which is what I'm using right here, is set around 46 million DPS. And I also have Focus Ballista in a 6-link Ballista Totem Toxic Rain setup as well. So it's essentially double Toxic Rain in that sense. That is pushing near 10 million DPS. So I'm doing well over 50 million DPS single target. Now, what kind of video would it be if I didn't feature the Feared in here? Everyone wants to know, when they're testing a build, what it's capable of doing. They want to test the Feared. But again, this is not a bossing build. I just want to show you, that this build is so powerful at the end game max gearing level that it can handle the Feared pretty easily. Unfortunately, my greatest strength is how much damage I can front load initially before the encounter starts, and I was lazy and I didn't check the portals, or I didn't check the bosses, and I actually completely wasted that opportunity. I was casting Toxic Rain straight onto the Cortex boss, which doesn't even spawn initially. So that was a giant waste, and now I'm forced to be stuck in a situation where there's multiple bosses in the ground, and it's kind of hectic, and maybe I lose the entire map from this. But no, fortunately, once I get the ball rolling here at the end, I am able to run around a little bit like anyone would, even with kind of mediocre, lackluster recovery. You can see if I ever get to a point where I can actually stand and nuke, I mean, stuff just dies almost immediately. One of the biggest reasons this is not a bossing build is because you can never, almost never, just stand still and nuke. But my goodness, if you could, wow, this build would be incredible. Well, that's why totem builds are so good. Non-focused ballista totem builds are so good because you can just cast once and run away. When I first started playing, I played Burning Arrow Elementalist first, and I did that for the first league as I explored the game and became very familiar with that spec. I took that spec and did it in Expedition as well, even though the ability was nerfed into the ground. And I wanted to push that build as far as I could at the time. I didn't make a video on that, but that's another story. This season, I decided to actually go meta for the first time, my third season. And I decided I'd do Toxic Rain, and I would just, league start this ability and build, and then I would switch to something else that interested me later. Well, nothing else ever actually really interested me later, so I was actually quite enjoying this spec as I was gearing it up. I was seeing real increases in very nice incremental increases in my damage and survivability, and I really liked it. I went ahead and pushed it all the way. If you check my gear, you're going to see I'm incredibly geared. Ballparking around 1,000 exalts worth of gear on me. The average cost of each individual piece of gear that I'm wearing is near 100x. Some were more, some were less, but I also have two completely different sets of gear because we had a brand new league that focused on magic finding, so I did push that as well. That'll be the 5th highlight video. We have here in the 3rd highlight video, you probably been watching the background, I have a simulacrum. Now, I never actually really ran simulacrum, regrettably so. I quite enjoyed this encounter. This one really spoke to me as far as like high skill cap, high demand of survivability and such. You can see my health dipping pretty low. I have plenty of leech with Atsiri's Flask as long as it's up. I am running a Headhunter at all times here. Every single video of this featuring Headhunter, even if it's bossing and I get no use out of it in particular. Obviously, if I pushed my gear to the absolute max, I would have been running Mage Blood for this and the previous 2 highlights. But I never did pick up a Mage Blood, and that's okay. Headhunter is actually not too bad on here if you can manage to kill the bosses quickly enough. But at actual Simulacrum rank 30, it's a little bit too much to bear here. I made a giant mistake trying to go up that ladder while the Spellcaster boss was out, and he packs quite a punch. He's a serious threat in here. And unfortunately, when you die in the Simulacrum, you try to go back in, and there's no cannon fodder to build any rampage stacks or any Headhunter buffs. It's actually quite difficult to get the ball rolling again, and you're going to see me kind of struggle to get through here, but I do ultimately prevail before it's all over. Showcasing right here what you see, it's kind of me not even really knowing the encounter. I don't even know why I went up the stairs like that, but you learn, you figure things out. Anyway, I don't think there are that many builds out there that can handle Simulacrum Wave 30, hardly at all, and the fact that I was able to do Wave 29 with mods like Monsters have increased crit chance, crit multiplier, increased damage, and extra physical damage as fire. These are some of the worst mods I could be facing, and I'm still handling it. At Wave 29, I did it deathless in that wave, and most of the, I think actually all of the waves before that. I just figured I'd showcase the last couple of waves in that one. And so this video is coming to a close here, this particular highlight. And this will essentially conclude the sort of bossing portion of it. I kind of shift from bossing over to mapping, so you can kind of see what mapping is, because mapping's where it's really at. So far, I haven't even been using Caustic Rain, because Toxic Arrow as a self-cast is just such superior damage. If I use Caustic Arrow as a self-cast, I basically sacrifice 90%, almost 90% of my damage, at least in terms of potential damage. Now, the nice thing with Caustic Arrow is it covers a huge spread, and it's not something where I just stand and nuke. I just, cast once, move, cast once, move. So it is the mapping ability here. What you see right now is actually a previous highlight video that I had a few weeks ago. And I was running what ended up being actually my favorite, most enjoyable content of the season, which was fairly high juicing Nemesis 3 or Nemesis 4 with the Delirium Mirror instead of Delirium Orbs. And I enjoyed it because it added an extra element of fun and challenge to the map, where I had to, orient my run through to be a certain speed that would actually keep up with the mirror. And in the end of this particular run, I hit the fabled 300 simulacrum splinters. I was quite proud of that moment. I did not hit it repeatedly, but I managed to average over 200 simulacrum splinters. Bear in mind, I was not fully investing in the map. This was about a 1.5 to 2x investment per map. Only one winged scarab, for example. I was using elevated sextants, but I definitely could have blown more currency to invest in the map, and more or less guaranteed myself 300 stacks if I completed it in time. The next map, this last video here, is in my opinion, the most challenging one you're going to see. Now, what you're about to watch here is basically kind of the same thing you just saw with Tropical Island, where I take the same concept and I do it through magic finding. Now, I'm going to put 2 POVs down in the description below, and the second one here is actually showcasing magic finding. Now, I'm basically 100% positive nobody else was doing this right here, what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is I'm not running a Lightning Arrow Raider or Deadeye. I'm running a Caustic Arrow self-cast with Ballista Totem as a focus in the 6th link. As a backup single target DPS. And I'm equipping about as much magic find gear as I possibly can. If you see on the right hand side, you'll see that I juice this map up very heavily. I have almost 100% pack size. I have 145 rarity and 243 quantity. 60% more quantity, increased quantity on my gear, as well as a whopping 230% increased rarity on my gear. Most of that is coming from the 5 link, thanks to increased rarity support, where I'm sacrificing my 6 link, sacrificing a ton of damage from a 6 link into a 5 link for that increased rarity support on Caustic Arrow. And there's just all kinds of different points in my gear where I have increased rarity. My flasks, for example, there's a lot there. Running the gold flask, running the enchantment as well on my mana potion, or mana flask rather. And you can see me just kind of blowing through this map, keeping my headhunter buffs pretty high, and practically one-shotting everything with a Caustic Arrow spread, despite sacrificing so much on my damage, as well as so much on my for more defense, because this is 300 stacks through most of the map, or at least toward the end of the map. And if I don't have my character geared to the T on defense, I'm very likely to die in this, as they're going up to like 80% delirious at 300 stacks. I mean, that's quite the requirement. And I found this to be the pinnacle of gameplay this season. It's kind of sad it's going away, Scourge, into the next season, but I had a lot of fun while it lasted. There, we'll find what's good to do next time. But again, this video is really just showcasing the potential strength of Toxic Rain, as well as Caustic Arrow. And if you're someone who's thinking about going all the way with it, yeah, I highly recommend it. I had a terrific time this season. I am going to league start Toxic Rain again, especially now that I know what I'm doing. And I probably won't do it all the way through, but I do have a tendency to be bullheaded and just stick with whatever I started with. That's how I've played so far this league. We had a really cool double drop right there. Just happened to be in the stream. It's not really showcasing the drops here, but it's always nice to see to be rewarded for doing challenging content like this. Still holding on to on the deli mirror without any delirium watchstones or rather passives. Or no, I'm mistaken there. I do have the delirium passives that are making the mirror last a little bit longer. But if you've ever tried to complete a full deli mirror on the tower without a whole bunch of mechanics that freeze the mirror, I mean, you know how insanely difficult that is. You have to go really fast. And by the way, this particular map, if you've checked the modifiers, it's actually extra challenging in terms of monster health. I happen to roll both. Monsters have extra health and chaos resistance, which is pretty rare to hit both of those mods. And so I think one of the weaknesses of what you're seeing in this particular video is it looks like maybe the monsters aren't all quite dying in the time that I run through. Well, most of the maps don't have both a more monster life and chaos res, so most of the time it's not a big deal. I'm just kind of playing it the way I'm comfortable with. I did hundreds of these runs. This is one of the better runs. And that's what you see right there. So, definitely give it a try if you want to, guys. Ask me questions in the comments below if you'd like. Until next time, I am going to come out with another video a little bit more geared toward Toxic Rain as a league starter. My plan for 3.17. This is the last league. This is the last week of 3.16. And I will catch you guys in the next video. So, thanks for watching.